5 years ago to this day, in fact, I walked into school. Now that might seem like a boring way to start my speech, but that day that I walked in was the day after I'd been ill. And again, that might seem like the boring way to start my talk. But that day that I'd been ill was the day of the GCSE taster lessons, and I'd missed them. I was at home being ill, so I'd missed them completely. Just so you know, this is me, this is digital me that you're going to get used to during my talk, and this is ill me on that day. So on that day, I didn't get a glimpse at all of what GCSE lessons were going to be like, so I didn't know what to choose. I had a rough idea of what I did want to choose, but one of the main things I wanted to choose was business studies. So the next day I went into school, as you do, and I went into the business studies class at break, and I gingerly approached the teacher and asked what had I missed. I apologised, I was really keen, I apologised that I was ill and I'd missed her lesson, and I asked what I'd missed. And she looked up from her desk, she was marking some work, and she just said to me, we did a few worksheets and looked at a case study. It's probably not really worth you doing it, but if you want to find out more, ask some of the previous students. Now, to me, that was the worst, most unenthusiastic pitch I'd ever received in my life. And that's when I learned one of the most fundamental goals in business, that if you don't believe in what you're selling, those people aren't going to believe in you. Your audience aren't going to believe. You're all here today because you believe you could listen to 8 great speakers, and I'm here because I want to share my experiences and believe that you'd be a good audience. And that's worked. We've both believed in each other, but that teacher didn't believe in her course, so I didn't believe in it. But I was still interested in the course. I was still interested in business studies because I wanted to go into business, and it was a unique opportunity to learn about it at school. So that evening I went out and I bought the Business Studies GCSE revision guide for a couple of pounds from a shop. And when I got home that evening, I decided to read through it. I decided to read through this revision guide and see what the course was really about before making my mind up. And I just found that most of it was common sense. It was dead boring. I was reading about McDonald's and how they market. I was reading about HSBC's financial report from a couple of years ago, and it was boring and it was common sense. And I didn't see why I should want to take the course. Why would I not give it to a more valuable subject like a language which would help me in business? So that's what I did. I decided to take German for GCSE that year instead of business studies, and all because that teacher didn't really believe in her course. What I did expect, though, if I had taken a subject, was that at the end of the year, I would have been Alan Sugar. I would have been great. I would have got an A. I would be Alan Sugar by the time I left school, and it would be a really great experience taking business studies. But it wasn't. But what I did learn when I came back to start my GCSEs in year 10 was that other people were selling bits and bobs, mainly the typical sweets and drinks in the playground, and I thought I'd get a bit of a glimpse in this. So that night, I went out and I bought sweets and drinks, and the next day I went into school, and I was selling sweets and drinks. And again, this is digital me. I look a bit different. I've aged from year 9 to 10 over the summer. And within a couple of weeks, I learnt my first real tip of business, and that was competition. These other kids who'd been selling it for years, and they had their unique little groups of people who would buy from them. They didn't like it at all, and it soon got into sort of what I would consider sort of like a mafia turf war, and it was a bit scary. There was these groups of people who didn't want me to sell the stuff because I was cheaper than them, because I was selling to their friends, and because people wanted service and price, and that's what people want in business, but they wouldn't deliver that. So the sweet shop closed, as it was, and I gave up on that. But we move ahead a little bit more. And when I started, or when I finished GCSEs, it came to the point again where I had to choose what subjects I wanted to learn. And business studies A-level was an opportunity. So I thought I'd try that out. Again, I was ill, mysteriously. I was ill that day, but I was still intrigued. And by this point, another business studies teacher had joined the school. And this was the sort of teacher who you really look forward to having on a Monday morning, who you really hoped would cover your lesson if your other teacher was ill, and who could have a really great laugh if you could talk to him about the football. And he was just a great laugh and a really good teacher who you'd remember for years and years. And that teacher wasn't in that day. So I went back to the original teacher, and she said the same again. They did a few worksheets, they looked at a few case studies, and it just, again, didn't appeal to me. This was the second chance that they had to sell it to me, and they didn't manage to do it. So I started sixth form, and within the first week, I started a business. I started my first business, which I now run today. And that was through teaching myself graphic design for a few years in my spare time. And when someone asked me how much I charged, I didn't have a clue. I Googled it, I saw what the industry rate was. I put media on the end of my surname, which seemed to be the common thing to do at the time if you're starting a business. And I made my first invoice, which was daunting in itself. And there we go, I was in business. And it was as simple as that. I was going to be a millionaire, and that was it. I was done. And that was business. I didn't need business studies. I knew what I was doing by this point. But what I did realise is when I spoke to other business studies students, mainly because the business studies teacher I had invited me back to school twice now to deliver a talk to the students about my business experiences for free, because if a school wants to hire someone to come in to talk about business, it's too expensive, but you can't put a price on that because business isn't a textbook, and the textbook's £40. To pay a speaker for the day can be less than £100, and schools won't do it. So what I envisaged is that what publishers of business studies books really were these people. Business studies publishers were writing books, they were getting a couple of facts from Wikipedia, they were throwing some logos into a book, making it look nice and pretty, and then selling it. And these textbooks would be sold year after year after year without being updated, and they don't really reflect real business at all. If I was at school and I wanted to be an actor, I know I'd take drama. If I wanted to be a mathematician, I'd take maths, science, and so forth. But business, you can't take business, you take business studies. Why would I want to learn about a business? Why not how to start a business, which is what I really wanted to learn. And I remember having many arguments with business studies teachers. And one of the main sort of arguments I had was, if these business studies teachers were so passionate about what they were talking about, and if they really enjoyed business enough to teach people, then why aren't they the millionaires that we're learning about in business studies? Why aren't they on the TV or Dragon's Den that we go home and watch for business study homework? Why weren't they there? And that got me in a bit of trouble, obviously, and teachers didn't really like it, and one of the teachers still doesn't like it. But that's how business studies is taught at the moment. It's taught by people who sometimes aren't really interested in it or don't have first-hand business experience, whereas we could just get people who have got real business experience to teach it, because that's how you're going to inspire the new generation. This is kind of what I found with business studies, is that if you didn't adhere to that textbook, you were going to get an F all year round, because business studies is all about what's in the textbook. It's not about your business experience. It's not about life experience. It's not about studying an entrepreneur who's just started. You have to look about an entrepreneur who's been established for many years, who you probably might not even heard about, and it's normally a CEO. And is a CEO really that into business? They haven't made their own business most of the time. They've made their way to the top, or they've fought their way in, or they've been in the business for 30 years, and they'll get to that point and then they'll retire. And I didn't really see the point in wanting to learn about that. To me, business is a journey, not a textbook, and this is what I want to convey, that business is so many different things. It's experiences, it's a wealth of knowledge that you can't simply get in a classroom, and schools really need to realise that. I wouldn't be able to show you this slide if I hadn't gone out my way in business since then. I wouldn't have been able to make people pick up awards if I hadn't done my own thing and decided that I wanted to learn what business was, not about businesses. So many teachers, students, even my parents and friends questioned why I was doing it at 16. Why was I in business? And I always said to them that is what I wanted to do, but because I hadn't taken the subject, they didn't understand it. And nowadays, when I go to any event and people ask me, did you take the subject? I say no, and they kind of don't believe me. And it's a bit sort of business studies university, and then you can either go work for a company and start your own company, or just start your own company, and that's not really how it works. In education, you need to break boundaries, not rules. It's all well and good breaking rules and being a bit of a rebel at school, but you should be breaking boundaries and learning about the subject outside of the classroom. Business studies is only ever going to teach you the same sort of thing. It's going to teach you what profit and loss is, how to market a basic business, and again, you'll look at case studies of old decadent businesses that maybe don't even exist anymore but are being put in a textbook to make money. And I really want to make sure that people do have a good understanding of business, but how to start a business, not actual studying of that business. Thank you.